And before I take off on my lesson, I want to make sure that everybody sees the screen here. Can everybody see what I'm showing here?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. This is the landing screen after you double click on the Microsoft Excel icon on your desktop. And basically, Microsoft always wants to be kind of user friendly. And so it starts off with this page right here. And basically, as you go along here, you will see things like make your first pivot table, get to know a Power Query, get more out of pivot tables. It loads with 3 immediate tutorials, if you will. But as you progress down further, it gives you templates, and templates to create maybe a photo calendar, or maybe a template to create a personal budget. And you can see some of the choices there as I scroll down there. So maybe to create a calendar or an academic calendar, maybe a household monthly budget. But you're here to understand some of the underpinnings of Microsoft Excel. So we're going to start off from scratch. And so I'm going to go ahead and click on Blank Workbook, which is up here at the upper left-hand corner. And that generates our work area for today. Now, like Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel operates on the ribbon apparatus. And so if you look here up here at the top, it has the File tab, Home, Insert, Page Layout, Formulas, Data, Review, and View. Now, some of these tabs are only applicable in Microsoft Excel, and that would be Formulas, Data, and then some tabs, which might have reminded you from Microsoft Word, are here too. But the Review tab might have some things that are only applicable to the spreadsheet right there, and in terms of protecting your spreadsheet, or you're protecting your worksheet right there. And then also View, you can break off the view, how you view your spreadsheet, for example. So right now we're in normal view, but in the Microsoft Excel 3 class, I will talk about how to freeze some of your spreadsheets. So especially if you work with large spreadsheet, so that's only applicable there. Formulas are only applicable to Microsoft Excel. You won't see it in Microsoft Word. You won't see it in Microsoft PowerPoint, for example. And so basically it has all these formulas here that apply to all sorts of, if you will, mathematical disciplines. And I don't know about you, but I stopped math probably at high school trigonometry. So if you asked me to look up something in calculus here, I probably couldn't do it for you. But the folks who developed Microsoft Excel probably have thought of all mathematical disciplines, so that's what's available here. But for the most part, we will stick on the Home tab for today's lesson, which is right here. And you can see some similarities with Microsoft Word. For example, it starts off with a clipboard section on the Home tab here. And so we have the Cut, Copy, and Format Painter. We also have the Paste button right here. And then if you look to the right, we also have some formatting section here with the font section. So you can choose the type that you want and the size of type that you want. And you can also increase or decrease your font size by clicking on these respective buttons right here. And on the second row here, we have the bold, italic, and underline, just like Microsoft Word. And then also, this is a border button right here, which means you can put borders around your spreadsheet right there. And I'll talk about this in the class today. Next, we have the alignment section, of course. And whereas Microsoft Word had 4 alignment buttons, left, center, right, justify, Microsoft Excel has 6. And the top row, I believe, is for the vertical alignment, so top, middle, and bottom. And then the bottom row is for horizontal alignment, so left, middle, and right. And then there are a couple other buttons right here, and we'll discuss these as we go along right there. And just like with Microsoft Word, some of these sections will have their own dialog box launcher. And so, for example, if I go to the font section and point at this little arrow right here and click, that will launch the dialog box for me, or as I call it, the old school dialog box, because it came with this is the same as from the original versions of Microsoft Excel. But hopefully, so this kind of conveys the fact that Microsoft always tries to give you more than one way of carrying out a task, and hopefully I can convey that to you. Now, just like with a Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel does come with its own quick access toolbar, which is up here in the upper left-hand corner. The save button is available for me right now, and then I have an undo button and a redo button. And just like before in Microsoft Word, Excel has its own little drop-down where you can choose from a list of preset commands to add to your quick access toolbar. And so, for example, maybe you want to add quick print. And so when you click, a quick print button appears right there. And then if you decide that you don't want the quick print, you can either go back and click quick print again to turn it off, or you can right click on the button directly and say remove from quick access toolbar. And so that's one element there. And just like with Microsoft Word, you can also go over and click on more commands. And when you do that, the quick access toolbar is selected for you, and you can choose to add these available commands to your active quick access toolbar listing here at the right. So that's the quick access toolbar for you right there. Now, as you progress down further, as you look at this, you'll see a box here that says A1. And I often joke, no, clicking on there will not give you a steak sauce or anything like that, A1 steak sauce. But it just basically tells you where your active cursor is located. And the active cursor on here is this little square right there that I'm clicking on right there. And notice that as I click around, the location information here changes. And so that's one partial role that the name box has. It tells you where your active cursor box is. And then over here to the right is something called the formula bar. And basically the formula bar is where all of your typing takes place. And also it's where you format all of your typing. And I'll hopefully discuss that in just a moment. Now here's your grid area right here. And your grid area is comprised of intersections. And those intersections are called cells. And basically the grid area is comprised of columns, which are labeled by letters of the alphabet, and rows, which are labeled by numbers right here. And so right now we're at A1 right here. And if you look down to the bottom of the screen here, we have 23. And if you look over to the right here, it looks like we have a T and a little bit of U right here. But Microsoft is so user-friendly that it gives you probably the largest spreadsheet in the world. And chances are you're only going to be using about maybe 1 or 2% of that spreadsheet area. And to bear this point out, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and do a Control right arrow key. And that's going to take me over to the furthest right column that Microsoft offers. And that furthest right column is XFD. Next, I'm going to do a Control down arrow key. And that's going to take me down to the bottom of my spreadsheet. And the bottom of my spreadsheet is row 1,048,576. And the question is, you know, my A1 right now is somewhere, you know, maybe 2 or 3 stories above this building right there. And my question is, who in their rightful mind would use such a spreadsheet that large from A1 all the way down to location XFD 1,048,576? And my honest answer is, I don't know. I think it's just Microsoft being very user-friendly. And unless you're a rocket scientist or work for NASA or maybe a mathematical genius, you're not going to use a spreadsheet that large. But I just wanted to show you how much of a spreadsheet Microsoft Excel gives you. So I'm going to do the keystroke Control Home. And that returns me back to location A1 right there. Now, I talked about this cursor right here, and it probably would behoove me to talk about how to move that cursor. And there are 3 separate choices to move the cursor. One is by clicking your mouse. So I click on B2, for example, and the cursor box moves to B2. And then I'll demonstrate again. I'm aiming at D3. I click my mouse, and the cursor box moves to D3. So that's one choice. Another choice, of course, are the 4 directional arrow keys that are on your lower right-hand corner of your keyboard. And your cursor box will move 1 space for every tap you give a particular key. So for example, I tapped it to the left there, so I'm at location C4. If I hit down a couple of times, I'm now at C6. And so the directional arrow keys is the second choice by which you can move the cursor box. The third choice is by clicking up here in the name box and typing in your desired location directly. And so for example, let's see, the Royals won yesterday. They won see 2-0 over Toronto. So I'm going to say R for Oils. I'm going to type in 2. I'm going to press enter. And my cursor box immediately goes to the R column in row 2 right there. Now, eventually, you're going to have, if you do a large spreadsheet, sometimes it's hard to find where your cursor box might be. Here's a visual cue that might help you along. If you look at the heading of the row or the heading of the column here, you'll see that it's a darker shade of gray, and that'll be a visual cue to you to direct you to where your cursor box might be. So for example, here, the R is shaded in a darker shade of gray, and the number 2 is shaded in a darker gray. So basically I can go from 2 points right there and then say, hey, oh, here's my cursor box right there. And it happens all the time. You have data or you have a spreadsheet so full of data that sometimes you lose sight of your cursor box. With that in mind, I think I'm ready to talk about typing into your spreadsheet. And so I moved back to location A1 right here. And I'm going to go ahead and immediately start typing. I'm going to go ahead and type my name. And you'll notice, and as I continue typing, you can see the typing cursor that appeared in A1, but also please note that up here in the formula bar, my typing appears right there. And I'm still at location A1. And also, if you take a look, there are a couple of buttons that now are available for me to use. The X here is your cancel button, meaning I didn't want to type that there, so I want to cancel out of it. And the keyboard equivalent of that is your escape key, which should be located up in the upper left-hand corner of your keyboard right there. The check mark is the accept the information or enter the information. And of course, you can click the check mark or you can press enter to enter your information. Now, there is a slight difference between the check mark and pressing enter on your keyboard. When you click on the check mark right here, you'll lock in your information and the cursor box returns back to normal. However, let's see, I'm going to go ahead and type some more gibberish here. If you do decide to press enter, your cursor box will always drop down 1 row. And I find using the enter key is a good thing after you type data, because let's say that you're typing a list of names or a roster of names. Well, type name 1, press enter, type name 2, press enter. So if I were given a preference, I would probably recommend pressing enter to lock in my information. Now, let's say that you have some typing there that you want to delete. Well, the routine for that is, of course, position your cursor box to where the correction is going to take place or the deletion is going to take place, and then simply press on your delete key on your keyboard, and that will remove the information. Are there any questions on how the spreadsheet is set up? Okay, well, we'll go ahead and proceed on creating a spreadsheet for this class. And if you do have the handout, I will be starting on page, it looks like, yeah, page 3. And so, and this is basically a sample there. We've been hired to work at Disney World, among all places. And so we've been hired to work actually at a souvenir shop. And so we need to track how much stuffed animal toys we sell on a daily basis. And so one of the good rules in creating a spreadsheet is, of course, to give your spreadsheet a title. And probably the best place to put the title of your spreadsheet is right at A1. And so we're going to call our spreadsheet Souvenir Sales Revenue. And I have it spelled out in bold after point 2 in the handout there. So without doing anything there, I'm going to go ahead and just type in Souvenir Sales Revenue. And you'll see that the typing spills over into the B column and the C column. And that happens a lot. I wouldn't worry about it right now. And so I'm going to go ahead and press enter. And that locks in my information at A1. And all the information there is at A1. If I went to B1, B1 on the formula bar shows as empty, and also C1, even though by visual inspection, we do see typing in the columns there. But everything is at B1 there. And then the next thing we probably would like to do is maybe make formatting changes to souvenir sales revenue. Currently, the default type is Calibri and size 11 right there. And so I want to go ahead and change it to Tahoma and size 20. Now, here's the routine for format changing. Make sure that you locate your cursor box at the location where you want the format changing to take place. And then I usually recommend going up to the formula bar, clicking my mouse, and then highlighting by pressing my Shift key and my left arrow key to highlight the text right there. Changes cannot take place without the text in the formula bar being highlighted. So I have it highlighted there. And I'm going to go ahead and go up to the, in the font section, to the font type button right here. And this is the same listing of fonts as in Microsoft Word. In other words, there are about 175 different font types. Also, keep in mind that the fonts are listed alphabetically. So we are in the A's right here, but we need to get down to T for Tahoma. Here's a little trick. If you know how your font type's spelt, but you don't see it in the immediate list here, you can go to your keyboard and say, okay, I know Tahoma starts with a T, so I'm going to hit T on my keyboard. And look what happens. My listings drop down to the first example of T, and coincidentally, it happens to be what I want, Tahoma. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this to make the choice. And don't worry that your text in A1 is shifted a little bit. That's par for the course. The next change I want to make is I want to change it from the default type from size 11 to size 20. And just like with Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel does use the preview feature when you pass your mouse over each one of these choices. So as you see, as I move my mouse over these numbers, my font type kind of shows that review right there, although barely. And so I'm going to go ahead and put it on 20, and that's what I want. And so here's what my souvenir sales revenue looks like now. And just for a little pizzazz, I'm going to go ahead and click on the bold button. And so I made that a little bit bold right there. And I don't have that in the instructions. I just like doing extra things from time to time. Okay, and then there's the final step of telling Microsoft Excel to accept the changes. And that's to press enter on your keyboard. And once you do that, souvenir sales revenue appears in its new font type. It's now Tahoma, size 20, and it's now bold. And so that's how you make formatting changes for typing on a spreadsheet. Are there any questions on that?
Yeah, question on that one. How do you center that, or are you going to go over that?
I will talk about centering in just a moment.
Okay.
Yeah, because most titles of a spreadsheet do have to be centered, and you're right on that. So anyway, so we have that established. And so, and by the way, too, in the font section, you can also choose your font type from the font section in the upper left-hand corner, and your size in the upper right-hand corner too as well. So that's another choice that's available for you. Okay, so now that we have the title established for our spreadsheet, it might be a good idea to put labels into our spreadsheet. Okay, and so for that, we have two sets of labels we need to account for. The names of the stuffed animal toys, and also the days of the week of the sales period. And so I'm on page 4, Roman numeral number 3 in the handout if you're following along. And so I'm going to go ahead and click my mouse to location A3. And I have 5 separate stuffed animal toys that I need to account for. And so at A3, I'm going to go ahead and type in Mickey, not Micker, Mickey, mouse. And since I'm doing a list here, I'm just going to naturally press enter. And it drops me down to A4, and I can type in the next toy. And the next toy is Donald Duck. And then I'm going to press enter. At A5, I'm going to type in Goofy. Press enter. A6 takes in, it will be Minnie Mouse. And I press enter. And last but not least, Roger Rabbit. and then press enter. And so those are the stuffed animal toys. We're just going to account for 5 of them. And then the next thing we need to do is account for the days of the weeks of the sales period that we have to account for. And so for that, I'm going to start my cursor at location B2. And I'm going to show you a feature called Autofill. Autofill allows you to complete sequences rather quickly. Sequences such as January, February, March, April, May, or Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Whenever you have sequences like that that appear in consecutive cells, you can use the autofill. And this is how it works. At B2, I'm going to start my sequence. And my first day in the sales period is Wednesday. So I'm going to go to my keyboard and type in Wednesday. And I'm not going to press enter. I'm not going to click on a check mark, but I will address your attention, and hopefully you can see this. At the lower right-hand corner of the cursor box is a little tool, and it's a little button right here, and that's the autofill handle. And when I point my mouse at the autofill handle, I go from a big cross to a smaller cross, and when it becomes a smaller cross, your mouse is engaging the autofill handle. The next step, I'm going to click and hold down on my left mouse button, and I'm going to drag it over into the C column. And notice that a border extends, and I also get a pop-up message that says Thursday. And then I'm going over to the D column, I get Friday. I continue, in the E column, I get Saturday. And last but not least, I get Sunday, which is right here. And once I'm satisfied that my sequence is complete, I let go of my mouse, and the days of the week fill in right there. And so eventually you learn how to do autofill in rapid order, in rapid succession, especially when you know you have to account for like a sales period or maybe consecutive days or consecutive months. And also, by the way, autofill also works with numbers. So like if you need to like list numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, it'll also work like that too. But here's what we have. So we have our labels there. And the next thing we probably need to do is maybe take a closer look at our spreadsheet here. And we notice a couple of things that make the spreadsheet appear awkward right now. And the souvenir sales revenue will address the centering issues with that in just a moment. But also take a look at Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, Minnie Mouse, and Roger Rabbit. You'll see that their typing spills over into the B column right there. And then also Wednesday, we don't see all of Wednesday in its B column right there. And if I were to be my own worst critic, I would probably say that Thursday, Friday, and Saturday and Sunday are a little bit cramped in their respective columns. One of the features in Microsoft Excel is you can either widen the column or increase the height of a row to accommodate your typing. And there are 2 different ways by which you can adjust your, we're going to do the column width here, and there are 2 different ways by which you can widen the column width. One is by clicking and dragging, and the other is by changing the numerical value of the column width. And we're going to do both here. I'm going to start with these stuffed animal toys right here. Now, and we can see the mouse, duck, mouse, and rabbit spill over there. And if I were to take my mouse and put it right next to the letter A right there, my mouse tool switches from the big cross to an upside down tool. Don't click here, because if you were to click here, you're going to highlight from row 1 all the way down to row 1,048,576. We don't necessarily want that. Instead, I'm going to place my mouse on the line that separates A from B. And notice that I get like a 2-way arrow right there. And I'm going to click and hold down on my mouse. And notice a couple things happen. I get a little pop-up telling me the width of the A column there. And then also, if you look very closely, the line on the spreadsheet that separates column A from column B becomes a slightly bolder there. And I'm still holding down on my mouse button, and I'm going to drag to the right, and notice that my value there increases. And then I can just use my eyesight to the best of my ability to move this bold line to the right of the longest type there, the 2 occurrences of the word mouse there. And I'm satisfied that that will help me out there. And when I'm satisfied everything looks good, I let go of my mouse. And the A column is now wide enough to house all the names of the stuffed animal toys right there. So that's the clicking and dragging method. I went up to the headers, the row headers right, or I'm sorry, the column headers right here. I placed my mouse on the line that separates one column from another column, and then I clicked and dragged to the right until I was satisfied that my typing would fit in one column right there. The other choice, the assignment of a number value, this is what we're going to do. I'm first of all going to go ahead and click on Wednesday. And then this time I'm going to highlight all the way over to the G column, even though there's no typing in G right here. And to highlight this time, I'm going to press Shift on my keyboard and my right arrow key until I get to the G column. And by the way, a note of an operation here. When you if you do highlight a bunch of cells like we just did right here, your starting cell, Wednesday in this instance, will always be in white, and everything else will be in the gray color right here. That's just a visual cue to you to remind you where you started your highlighting. Okay, so we have this highlighted right there. On the Home tab, we're going to go all the way over to the Cells section, which is towards the right here. I'm going to click on the Format button, and I get a drop-down list of choices. And the first one is row height, and the second one is column width. And that's the one that we want. So I'm going to click on column width. And what opens up is the world's smallest dialog box, which just gives me one thing, the column width there. And we know that Wednesday, for example, does not fit within 8.43 units. So it might behoove us to type in a larger number. So I'm going to exaggerate this a little bit. I'm going to type in the number 16. And then I'm going to click OK. And okay, that looks a little bit better, but it might be a little bit too spacious there. And so what I'm going to do is I can do my undo button again. I'll click undo. And then I'm going to go to the Format, column width, and maybe use a lower number. So how about 12? And then press enter. Okay, that looks much better. And then you might decide to maybe I'm going to click between the C and D column and maybe scrunch that in a little bit. Maybe the D and E column and scrunch that in a little bit. And so, in other words, of the two techniques here, you can combine those two techniques. And so, so you get the spreadsheet to your liking here. And then the E and F, I can do that. And then one last bit of housekeeping here. I'll click and drag like that. So that's how you account for the width of your spreadsheet. So one is the clicking and dragging method. And remember, the other one is the assigning of a numerical value to the width of the column. And remember, to do that, from the home tab, we went to the cell section, we clicked on the Format button, and then we clicked on column width, where we assigned that number value. Are there any questions on that?
I don't have a question on that, but I do have a question on where you click Format and there was an auto fit. If you were to click the auto fit with, would that apply to the settings of A2? Or it depends on what you click?
Actually, let's try that out. So you're talking A2, which is right there. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and click on Mickey Mouse. I'll click on A3. And let's find out. And then we'll go to Format. And then Auto Fit column width. And did you see what happened there? It's rather subtle.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So the answer to your question is yes. If you do want the column width to accommodate the largest type there, click on the largest type right there. So we clicked on Mickey Mouse. We went to Format, and we clicked on Auto Fit column width, and Microsoft Excel will adjust the column width based on the longest type. So the answer to your question is yes. So anyway, okay. Some other formatting issues with Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and also the mystery box right here. You can also center your typing in their individual columns. And so once again, I'm going to start with Wednesday, and then highlight all the way over into the G column. And then I spoke a little bit earlier about the alignment buttons right here, and the fact that Microsoft Excel comes with 2 sets of alignment buttons, the vertical alignment button, which is the top row, the horizontal buttons, which is the bottom row right there. Also, the alignment buttons are also available in the dialog box. And they come in the form of drop-down lists. So horizontal alignment is right here, and your vertical alignment is right here. So that's another choice by aligning there. I'm going to go ahead and cancel out this. And for right now, we don't have much height in terms of our typing here to make adjustments on the top row here, the vertical alignment. But we do have enough space here where we can maybe work with the horizontal alignment there. And with all these highlighted right there, I'm going to go to the bottom row and click on center. And Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and whatever's going to be typed here will all center for you. Now, now to answer Mr. Wallace's question about the title of our spreadsheet. I'm going to go ahead and click on A1 where our typing is, souvenir sales revenue. And just learning that I could center right here, I'm going to do what I just did. I'm going to click here, I'm going to click center, and the title of our spreadsheet is now centered. No, it's not. It did exactly what it did for these right there. In other words, we just centered the title of our spreadsheet in its respective column, column A. And the centering of a title of a spreadsheet, or maybe a sectional title of a spreadsheet, operates in a little bit of a different fashion. So I'm going to click on my centering button to turn this off. We have to use this button right here, merge and center, to center a title of a spreadsheet. And this is how it operates. Starting with A1, I'm going to highlight all the way over and include G1 right there. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on merge and center. And there you go. The title of the spreadsheet is now centered above the actual spreadsheet. And when you do merge and center, you take away the usage of B1, C1, D1, E1, F1, and G1. They're now all considered part of A1. If I were to move off to the right, I would land on H1. So that's how the merge and center operates. Did that answer your question, Mr. Wallace?
Yes, it did. But now let me ask you this question.
Okay.
I see that you're constantly going over to G. What is the reason for that?
Because I'm going to put some extra typing here eventually. And actually that might be a good time to put some extra typing in there, because we've got our spreadsheet established, we've got our labels centered, we've got our title of our spreadsheet centered. And so it might be a good idea to go ahead and put extra labels into our spreadsheet. And so I'll direct your attention as to where I'm talking about this. I'm now on page 7 of the handout, Roman numeral number 7 there. And so for starters, sometimes you're creating the spreadsheet for yourself, but I imagine most of the time you might be creating it for somebody else, i.e. A supervisor or maybe a committee or something like that. So one of the goals of creating a spreadsheet is to make it as easy to read as possible. And one of the things that you can do, in addition to centering your text or centering the title of your spreadsheet, is also to put labels that will help them read the spreadsheet quickly. And here I'm talking about total labels. And so for starters, I'm going to go ahead and click my mouse at A8, below Roger Rabbit there. And before I type in anything there, I'm going to pre-format my typing here by saying I want to make it bold. I'm going to make my size there a little bit larger. I'm going to make it size 14. And let's see, just for demonstration's sake, I'm going to go ahead and choose a different font color. I'm going to choose blue. And now I'm going to go ahead and type in total. And see how my total appears right there? It's size 14, it's bold, and it's now blue. And then now over at G2, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to keep the same font size, size 11, but I'm going to go ahead and bold and underline it. And then also remember, I took the extra step earlier of centering it, so it's already centered. And so now I'm going to go ahead and type in total and then press enter. And so now you can see that G2 takes on the centering, the bold, and the underline right there. And so hopefully when you get ready to present your spreadsheet, it makes it easier. It makes it easier for the reader to read the spreadsheet. Okay, with that in mind, oh, and by the way, we're going to add a couple other labels to our spreadsheet a little bit later on. But our next step is we're going to go ahead and start putting in numbers in the spreadsheet. And I'm starting here on page 8 of your handout, Roman numeral number 8. And if you are following along the handout, you'll see towards the top that I have the sales listed, the Wednesday sales, I should say, listed for the stuffed animal toys there. And so we'll have to go over to B3 to start with Mickey Mouse. And we'll go ahead and just type in those numbers there for the sale. So Mickey Mouse did $13.50. And I'll press enter. And Donald Duck did 1125.75, so 1125.75. And please bear with me, my laptop computer does not have a 10 keypad to work with here, so I have to use the number line key to type this in here. Goofy did 879.64. Minnie Mouse did 1098.76. And Roger Rabbit did 734.09. So that's the sales data we've been given. But let's take a closer look at our numbers that we just entered here. There's something's a little bit off about our numbers here in the fact that we typed in the numbers, but Microsoft made these natural numbers. And that's because sometimes you have to tell Microsoft Excel what kind of numbers we're dealing with. Are we dealing with percentages? Are we dealing with exponents? Are we dealing with natural numbers? Are we dealing with dollars and cents? And so right now, when Microsoft opens, it always starts with natural numbers. You know, the natural counting numbers that we've all, learned back in grammar school, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And so when it ever encounters a decimal, it'll put the decimal in for us. But in the case of Mickey Mouse's Wednesday figure here, he did 13.50 even. And so when Microsoft saw that and saw there was no value for the decimals, it said, okay, it's still a natural number. So I'm going to just hack off that 00. And so what we need to do is we need to format these numbers to represent as currency. And to do that, I've highlighted from Mickey's data down to Roger's data right there. And then on the Home tab, I'll direct your attention to the number section right here. And I usually, I go to a couple different places for my number formatting. I can go to this drop down right here, and you can see all the data types that Microsoft Excel deals with. General, number, currency, accounting. It does a short date and a long date. And to be honest, I'm still trying to figure out the difference between these two. It does a time format, it does a percentage, it does a fraction, it does scientific notation. For our purposes, I'm going to choose currency. And when I click on this, watch what happens to my data. It now takes on the dollars in the cents that I wanted it to. So 13.50 in those cents for Mickey. Another example is Goofy did $879.64. And hopefully you can see how the effect that the others took there as well. Now, the number section, of course, just like with the font section, has its own dialog box launcher right here. And so you have an alternative place to go to make the formatting changes. And it's the Format Cells dialog box with the number tab selected for you. And since we already clicked currency, it shows currency. And in the dialog box, it gives you a preview of what negative numbers would look like. And so you could choose maybe to put negative numbers with a minus sign, negative numbers in the red, in parentheses, or in parentheses and the red. And of course, if you're not dealing with the American dollar, it gives you choices of other currencies to work with right there. And then also decimal places. And we're going to keep this at 2, of course, as well. So that's another place where you can change it to currency. And so that was post formatting. We typed in the numbers first, and then we post formatted the numbers to read as currency. But for the rest of the spreadsheet, I'm going to go ahead and pre-format the spreadsheet. And to do that, I'm going to click on C3 below Thursday on Mickey's row. And then I'm going to highlight all the way down to Roger's row. And then I'm going to highlight all the way over to Sunday's column. And then once again, I'm going to go ahead and click on the drop down and then click on currency. And it appears that nothing happened there, but believe me, Microsoft now has the instructions to type in our numbers here as currency. And to bear this point out, at the bottom of page 8, I have the Thursday and Friday sales figures here. So if you'll bear with me for just a moment, I will go ahead and enter these numbers for you. So on Thursday, Mickey did and then I'll take advantage and use the enter key. And you can see the $ automatically appears, and we have decimals there. Donald did.
While you're entering those numbers, can I ask the question real quick?
Sure.
When you enter one number, what happens if you hit tab instead of enter?
Okay, well, you can use tab if you want to. What that will do is that knocks you over to the right instead of down. And I think using the enter keys it feels more natural when you're typing in data. But if you're working crossways and entering data, probably the more comfortable key to operate with would be the tab key.
Okay, wonderful.
So and maybe it's just a personal bias that I go up and down instead of left to right, you know, and that's just based on your personal style, I believe. So, okay, so I'm now on Friday's data. Okay, and so I have all my data typed in. I'm checking and make sure I typed in everything correctly here. And looks like I goofed up on Minnie Mouse's data in her sense. And so this happens all the time. Sometimes you have the case of the fumbly fingers where you're not typing accurately, and sometimes you make a mistake. On my sheet, I had Minnie Mouse earning $11.97.56. But on my spreadsheet, I typed in 1197.86. And so if you do make a mistake, one thing that you can do is you can overtype it with the correct data. And so instead of 1197.86, I'm going to overtype with 1197.56. And that corrects the data right there. So so keep that in mind. If you're not the most accurate of typists, you can always overtype mistakes with the correct data. And so that's one of the subtle yet powerful features of Microsoft Excel. Okay, I'm on page 9 of the handout, and we're now ready to add up our numbers here. And we don't have data yet for Saturday and Sunday, and we won't worry about that for right now. We are ready to employ a couple different methods by which we can add up numbers. So first of all, I'm going to move my cursor to location B8. And there are a couple different ways by which you can add numbers. One choice is by using formulas. And the other choice is by using the Autosum function button. And I'm going to show you both choices. I'm going to start off with using formulas. And in setting this up, one thing I should probably talk about in terms of when you are wanting to represent data and also maybe add up data, divide data, find an average of data. Microsoft Excel uses a certain syntax, much in the same fashion that when we type a sentence, the sentence starts with a capital letter. When you type a formula, or if you type a function statement in Microsoft Excel, it always begins with an equal sign. There is no exception to that rule. So once again, if you decide to use a formula, or if you decide to use a function, you always start it in syntax, in Microsoft Excel syntax, with the equal sign. So at B8 here, I'm going to go ahead and use a formula. So I type in the equal sign. And then next, we're just going to focus on Wednesday's column right there. And one of the key things that I did when I did the in-person Excel classes was I picked on a student. I guess picked on might be a little bit hard. I chose a student from the class, and I said to them, I'm going to give you a 5, I'm going to give you a 4, and I'm going to give you a 3. And I say to the student, what's your response to that? 5, 4, 3. And after they hemmed and hawed for a while, they couldn't give me really an exact answer, except when I gave them more instructions. I'm going to give you a 5 plus 4 plus 3 equals. And they knew the instructions was to add up those numbers. And formulas operates in that same manner. We need to add this location plus this location plus this location plus this location and plus this location to get our result. And so we're going to go ahead and type a formula here. The formula I have is typed. I do have this formula typed out in section C under formulas there. And so I'm going to type in a B and a 3. Excuse me. Okay. I have a little frog in my throat. I apologize. Okay. A B3. And notice that on Mickey's row on the Wednesday column, it highlights with the blue box right there. I type in the operator. I type in the operator, and this operator is going to be the plus symbol. So shift plus, and then I type in B4. And notice that Donald Duck's Wednesday data lights up. Shift plus. I'm going to click on B5. And notice what happens when I click on B5. It adds it to the formula up here. And also we get a flashing marquee around Goofy's row, and that's okay. And then shift plus. I'm going to click on Mickey Mouse's row. And then shift plus. I'm going to click on Roger Rabbit's data right there. And so up on the formula bar, I got equal B3 plus B4 plus B5 plus B6 plus B7. And then by visual inspection, I see that all the data in Wednesday for each of the stuffed animals lights up. And here's the same formula. Also note that each letter has the same color assignments as the locations there. And so after visual inspection, you're convinced that everything's typed in well. You press enter. And you get a total for Wednesday. That's what we sold for Wednesday at our little souvenir shop. Okay. Now, another question that I posed when I taught this in person was how many people would like to have a job 40 hours a week, or I mean, no, not 40 hours, 40 hours a week, 8 hours a day, doing nothing but typing in formulas. And everybody said no, because after maybe doing this for about 5 minutes, everybody would start getting a headache because of all the detail you must pay attention to. That's where you might decide to use the Autosum feature. And the Autosum feature, to set this up, is I'm going to first of all click on C8. So we're going to concentrate on Thursday's feature right there. And then I'm going to direct your attention on the Home tab, all the way over to the editing section right here, left-hand column, and the Autosum button is right here. The Autosum button here is set for sum, but if you click on the drop-down, you can also do an average, you can count numbers, you can find a maximum in the group of numbers, you could find a minimum in the group of numbers. And by the way, we'll cover these in the Microsoft Excel 3 class if you decide to attend that class. But for our purposes right now, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and deactivate this drop down. I can just simply click on Autosum right here. And when I do, look what happens to my Thursday column here. A marquee appears right there. And then also at location C8, I get a function statement, equal sum, begin parentheses, C3 colon C7 close parenthesis. Okay, a definition here. C3 colon C7 is what is known as a range of cells. And that's the cells that appear here in the flashing marquee. When you do a function statement, it begins with a parentheses and it closes with a parentheses. And then of course, since we're adding numbers, we're doing the sum and equals. And so the key thing for Autosum here is visual inspection, making sure that the Autosum picks the right group of cells for the purpose of you finding your total. And everything here looks good to me. So I'm going to go ahead and press enter. And I get a total for Thursday's column. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go to Friday. And I'm going to repeat the Autosum. Okay, and this time it does D3 colon D7, and that's what it's selected right there. And then sum and then equals, everything looks good. So I'm gonna go ahead and press enter. So you can see the Autosum, when you're adding numbers, goes much faster than typing in formulas here. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and click on Saturday. And I'm feeling really sure of myself because the Autosums here worked so quickly for me. And so I'm gonna go up and click on Autosum. But on visual inspection, Autosum selected the wrong set of numbers for me. I was hoping, much in the same manner as Thursday and Friday, Autosum would select this range of numbers for me. And that's okay, except when Autosum reads the spreadsheet, when it sees no data here, it's going to go for look for another area for data. And in this case, it went left. And so usually if you're setting up Autosum in advance, you can use copy and paste in order to set that up. And so, okay, so once again, to demonstrate what went wrong here, I clicked on Saturday at E8, I clicked Autosum, and Autosum, instead of going up, went to the left. And that's not what I wanted. So I can go ahead and do a quick fix here by clicking and dragging my mouse right here, and it changes everything right there. And that's okay too. But also another choice is copy and paste, and let me show you that. So I'm going to hit escape to get all this out of my screen. Okay, I'm going to do Autosum. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm going to get out of there. My apologies. I'm going to go ahead and go back to Friday and click on Friday's total. And then up here, I'm going to go ahead and click on copy. Okay, and then notice that Microsoft puts a marquee right here. And so what's happening here? It's taking this action right here, the sum of D3 colon D7, and it's sending that to the clipboard. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on Saturday. And notice that I still have my flashing marquee right there. And this is kind of an important concept here, and I don't put it in the handout, but Microsoft makes a relative reference. In other words, it's capable of mimicking the activity at one location and applying that activity in another location. And so when I copied this formula right here, I was asking Microsoft Excel for it to mimic the activity that's taken place here and apply it here. And so my active cursor box is on Saturday. When I go up and click on paste, Microsoft returns 0.00. And believe it or not, that's what I want, because when I look up here on my formula bar, equals sum E3 colon E7. Well, here's the E column and everything here. I don't have any data here, so it's nothing but zeros. So it returns 0, so that's correct. And please note that my source is still in its flashing marquee right here. And so I'm going to go ahead and click on Sunday. And I'm going to click on paste. And I get 0.00. And if I look up on the formula bar, it's F3 colon F7. So Autosum is a quick fix, or it's a quick way of adding up your numbers. And then also you can use copy and paste to set up Autosum for areas in your spreadsheet where you've not experienced data yet. And so now we have all this set up right here. Are there any questions about formulas or about using Autosum?
Yeah, with with the very first one that you showed us in column B, can you do the same with that one?
Well,
Just copy and paste it, or?
you're beating me to the punch there, because I am going to show you it. and we added up numbers here for our columns. You can also add up numbers for your rows. And so I'll direct your attention on the handout, the page. Let's see if I can get the page right. It's going to be on page 11. And so this is, the copy and paste is a quick way to skirt around, having to type in formulas all the time. Now, remember that when we did the Autosum here, we asked it to mimic the activity here and here, and it did it successfully. You can also use copy and paste for formulas. But the first thing you always have to do is you always have to type in the first formula. And in that regard, we're going to focus on Mickey's row 3, and we're going to put his total for the week at G3 right here. And of course, we have to type in the formula. So equal B3 shift plus C3 shift plus D3 shift plus, and even though there's no data here, E3 shift plus, and then F3 shift plus. Okay, now I've got my formula typed in, and you'll notice that I put in an extra plus in there. And this is kind of why formulas are such a headache sometimes. Sometimes you get into that routine where you go, this number plus this number plus this number plus this number plus, and you're not paying attention because sometimes typing in numbers can be so tedious, you forget to pay attention to detail. It's happened to me a billion times. And so watch what happens when I press enter right here. It comes up with an error message. We found a typo in your formula and tried to correct it for, and you want to accept this correction? That's because it doesn't like the syntax right there. I'm going to say no. And so it tells me it's an incomplete formula right there. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click up here behind the F3 and take that away. And then another thing too is if you're typing in and you're using that number row to type in your plus symbol, a lot of times you might forget to hit the shift key. And so for example, I'm going to put an equal sign between and not do a shift equal sign to type in my thing right there. And then I press enter and watch what happens at G3. It's false. And that's because Microsoft is reading the formula. It says B3 plus C3 is equal to D3 plus E3 plus F3. You're asking Microsoft Excel to compare one section to another section to see if they're equal. Microsoft did as it was told and said that they don't equal each other, so that's false. So that's why copy and paste might be a good thing, because typing in formulas all the time leads to these kind of mistakes. And so let me fix my error here. I'm going to back out my equal sign here and type in my plus symbol right there and then press enter. And there's my total for the week, 4,730.66. And then to save myself further embarrassment in terms of typing in formulas, I now use copy and paste. So I'm going to click on my source. I go up and click copy. And then this time I'm going to click down to G4. And then I'm going to drag all the way down to the total row. And see that my source is still active there. And then I'm going to go ahead and click paste and watch what happens. Each row comes up with their own separate total. And that's where Microsoft Excel is making a relative reference again. Even though this is my source and this is the activity taking place right there, by virtue of the fact that I did copy and paste, Microsoft makes a relative reference saying, oh, you're doing the activity here. So I'm willing to bet that you want to do the same activity here, and notice how everything is reflecting row 4. If I click on row 5, see up in my formula bar the activity taking place there. Even on row 8, the total of totals, the same activity is taking place right there. So in most instances, you type in the formula the first time and then employ the copy and paste for the remainder of the data that you need to account for, and hopefully it works out for you. Did that answer your question, Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so we're making good progress on our spreadsheet right here. And you're so proud of your spreadsheet that you show it to your colleague or even your supervisor. And then the colleague or supervisor comes back. That's great, everything looks good on your spreadsheet. But weren't you required to put the stuffed animal toys in alphabetical order? And so after saying a few selective words and grinding your teeth for a little bit, you address that situation. And it's an easy fix. Microsoft Excel has something called sort and filter. And it's on the home tab over here on the editing section right here. It's this little button here, the A to Z with the little funnel right there. And this is how sort and filter works. And usually sometimes you have to sort and filter after you've typed in all of your data. Okay, and so let's go ahead and put the stuffed animal toys in alphabetical order. But not only that, let's go ahead and move their respective data to match the move. And so I'm going to click on Mickey. And then I'm going to highlight all the way down to Roger's row, but I'm not going to include the total row there. And then I'm going to highlight all the way over and include the total column though. Okay, so I've got everything that I want to highlight right here. I go over to the sort and filter button right here. I click and I get a drop-down list of choices, sort A to Z or sort Z to A. Or I can do a custom sort. A custom sort, since this is a simple spreadsheet, will not have anything applicable here, but we can focus on sort A to Z or Z to A. I'm going to click on sort A to Z and watch what happens to my spreadsheet. Donald Duck is now first, and Goofy is now second. Mickey and Minnie are now third and fourth, and Roger remains fifth in my list right there. But not only that, their data also moved respectively by virtue of the fact that this was all highlighted. And so that's how you do a simple sort and filter. Now in the Microsoft Excel 3 class, I take this sort and filtering to a couple of different levels. Let's say that you have a listing of names and a couple of those names are like John Jones II, John Jones Jr., John Jones Jr. II, or something like that, where you have that little extra wrinkle there. Well, you can take it to like a secondary and also a tertiary or a third level when it comes to sorting there. And that's what my Microsoft Excel 3 class talks about right there. But for right now, this is a simple sort. And so we're going to go ahead and move on. My discussion, by the way, on sorting is on the bottom of page 12, Roman numeral number 10, if you're following along. But now we need to account for other things in our spreadsheet. You know, these are the sale prices for the stuffed animal toys, but now we need to account for sales tax and also a grand total. And so I'm on the bottom of page 13 if you're following along. And for starters, I'm going to go ahead and click my mouse on location A9. And I'm going to keep it at size 11, and I'm going to keep it there. I'm going to just make it bold right here. And I'm going to type in sales tax. And then I'm going to go ahead and tab over to location G9. And at G9, I'm going to type in a decimal. 0.0095. I think that's right. Yeah, okay. Okay, it's in decimal form, and I'm going to go ahead and press enter. But I want to go ahead and convert that to a percentage. And so to do that, I'm going to have to tell Microsoft what I'm doing here. I'm going to go up to the number section here, click on my drop down, and here's percentage, 9.50, and that's what I want. And so that converts that 0.095 to a percentage right there. Next. We're going to go ahead and go to G10. Here, I'm going to go ahead and say, let's go ahead and make this size 16. We'll make it bold. And we'll make it purple. And then there, I'm going to go ahead and type in grand total. And then I'm going to tab all the way over to location G10. And so far we've done simple arithmetic. We just done simple addition here. But there's kind of a phrase that follows in terms of arithmetic that Microsoft Excel follows. And here's the phrase: please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. And basically this helps you remember the order of operations if you have complex math to do on a spreadsheet. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Please, P, parentheses, E, excuse, exponents, M, my, multiplication, D, dear, division, A, aunt, addition, and then S, Sally, subtraction. And that's the order of operations that Microsoft Excel follows. My dear Aunt Sally. I say that because on the top of page 14 here, I have the formula that we're going to use for figuring out our grand total. And so first of all, I'm going to type in the equal sign. And then I'm going to type in G8. And note that Microsoft puts a box around my subtotal right there. And then next, I'm going to type in my plus operator, so shift plus. And then we need to find the percentage of the subtotal. And so here we have to start a parenthesis. So I'm going to do a shift and the opening parentheses on the 9 key here. So shift 9 key, and there's my opening parenthesis. Once again, I'm going to type in G8 again. And then that little star there is multiplication. So I'm going to do a shift star. And then the G9 is our percentage that we're dealing with, the 9.5%. So shift. I'm sorry, G9. I'm sorry, type in G9. I got a little ahead of myself there. And then, of course, we need to close the parenthesis by doing a shift 0 key. And so in terms of the order of operation, when Microsoft makes the calculation for the company-wide grand total, first of all, it's going to do that multiplication inside the parentheses, the G8 times the G9. And then it's going to add it to the subtotal to give us a overriding figure. So I'm going to press enter here. And the grand total for the entire spreadsheet here is $18,606.36. And so remember, here's the formula that we use. And remember, it did the multiplication first, and then it added that total to the subtotal right there. And as a matter of fact, I kind of goofed up here. Instead of total here, I'm going to make that subtotal. And then press enter. And that's just a little bit of housekeeping right there. But does anybody have any questions as to how I calculated the grand total? Okay. All right. So we've got our data typed in and we have our data filled out. And let me add to the beauty of why I like spreadsheets so much. We have no data yet for Saturday or Sunday, but the idea is you can set up the spreadsheet in advance of the sales to come here. So let's say that we just finished Saturday's day of business. And let's say that Donald Duck did $1,200 in sales. So I type in 1,200 and I'm going to press enter. And the key things to watch are the Saturday column here, the subtotal and the grand total here, and also Donald Duck's total here. Watch what happens when I press enter. All of those locations changed by virtue of the fact that I incurred data for Donald Duck's total there. And that's because we've already set up the instructions for it to add up numbers as they occurred. And so that's the beauty of the spreadsheet. You can set up everything in advance and then just plug in the data as it happens. And so that's one reason why I love spreadsheets so much. I'm going to go ahead and delete this 1,200, and everything should revert back to their original figures here.
That question?
Sure.
What if you wanted the sales tax listed per day?
Sales tax earnings per day?
Yeah.
You'd have to basically, let's see. Okay, what I could do here is I'm going to click on 9.5 here. I'm going to do a copy. And then I'm going to go ahead and paste it in for each day right there. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on the company-wide grand total there. And I'm going to do a copy there. And let me see if I can do a paste right there. And you can see it's all calculated right there. And then let's say if you just want the individual amount of sales tax, one thing is you can maybe create a line item entry right here, like sales tax dollars. And you can maybe do a formula where you say, let me put that in there. Here you could say equals this location minus this location, and press enter. And for that day, the store earned $492.88 in sales tax money. So it is possible to calculate the amount of sales tax money out of the total sales. So, but and that kind of convolutes my spreadsheet there. So I'd probably have to rearrange things there. But hopefully, in theory, that answered your question.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Okay, so let me go ahead and clean up my mess here a little bit. Okay, there we go. So, so it is possible. And I guess that makes sense because sometimes sales tax does have to be reported to the proper authorities or whatever. So, this class was constructed for the world of make-believe. So I call it the Mr. Rogers spreadsheet, I guess. But anyway, okay. So, so we've got our spreadsheet established here, and then maybe it's time to concern ourselves with maybe making the spreadsheet a little bit more readable for the user. And so one thing we can do is we can separate our data here from maybe the total section right there. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click on Roger Rabbit and highlight all the way over to his total right there. And I intend to create a bold line after Roger Rabbit's data to separate the data of the stuffed animal toys from the total section right here. And to do that, I'm going to go to the Home tab, the font section, and I'm going to use the borders button right here, which is right next to the underline button right there. I'm going to click down there, and here's my list of choices. And I'm going to go ahead and click on thick bottom border, which is right here. And then when I remove my highlighting, there's my thick bottom border. Hopefully you can see the difference between Roger Rabbit and what's going on down there. And then also, if you are creating the spreadsheet for your client, colleague, or supervisor, sometimes they'll only take maybe 2 minutes to read a spreadsheet where it took you maybe 2 hours to create the spreadsheet. That's a kind of a stark reality there. And so they're looking for the bottom line, let's say. And so they're saying, how much sales did we do, including sales tax? And so I'm going to put my cursor around here. I'm going to go back up to my borders button, and this time I'm going to do a thick outside border and remove it. And there we have it. So they can easily divert their eyes to what that might be. Now, printing. I don't have access to a printer, but I do have access to print preview. I'm going to do a file. I'm going to click print here, and the backstage view shows me my spreadsheet right here. And it looks like everything fits on the spreadsheet. So it sees the bottom border line right there, and also sees the thick outside border that I put right there. But there is something missing from the print, and that might be the grid lines that we used when we edited the spreadsheet. If you're the type of person who likes to include grid lines in their spreadsheet, I'm going to back out of this. This is where you go. I'm going to go to the page layout tab. And then I'm going to go about halfway across, and I'm going to go to the section that reads as sheet options. In the grid lines column, the view with the check mark there allows us to see all the grid lines here. So if I click that to turn it off, we just got nothing but the white space right there. I like the grid lines because it allows me to gauge my work. And then in terms of print mode, and you want to put grid lines in your print, click on the print check mark, And then I'm going to return back to File, back to Print. And you can see my print here now has grid lines for it. So that's how you put grid lines into your print. Now, another thing with your spreadsheet, sometimes your spreadsheet is long. Let's say that the spreadsheet goes from the A column all the way over to the M column. And so I'm going to go ahead and, for demonstration's sake, I'm going to click on M and I'm going to type it in the letter X and put that there. First of all, before I go back to print preview, it might be a little bit hard to see, but between the H column and the I column, I have a dashed line right here. That dashed line is the edge of your paper. And right now, this is intended to be typed on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper right there. So here's my right edge of my paper right here. So we know that X is going to be on page 2. And then also, there's also a horizontal line. And, oh, here it is. It's between rows 45 and 46 right there. That's the bottom edge of my paper. I don't know if you can see that on my screen or not. But after you do your first print preview, Microsoft Excel takes the liberty of putting dashed lines to show you where the edge of the paper is. Okay, with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and return back to File and Print. And if you look down here, Microsoft is reading page 1 of 2 pages. And if I click on the right arrow here, here's my page 2. Here's my little X right there. Okay, and sometimes in terms of printing, you could use a couple of ways to fit the entire spreadsheet onto one sheet of paper. Okay, one way is by changing your orientation of your paper, and you can do that in the print back screen view right here. It's located here where it says portrait orientation. You can click on the drop down and switch that over to landscape orientation. Okay, and see how it kind of switches the paper there, but it's still reading 2 pages right here. So another way that you can kind of scrunch everything onto one sheet of paper is this button here where it says no scaling. If you click on the drop down associated with that, you can say fit the sheet on 1 page. And so when I click that, it kind of shrinks down my spreadsheet there, but lo and behold, over here on the right hand side, here's page 2 where I typed in that X. So that occurs a lot. Like if you have maybe instead of, let's see, we have 5 days of data here, maybe you have maybe 12 days of data that you have to account for. Changing the orientation or changing the how the spreadsheet fits on one sheet of paper might be your best bet there. Okay, so we are at the end of the class. Are there any questions about what we covered today? Okay, one final thing that I probably need to add, and I should have started this at the very beginning of the class. The latest versions of Microsoft Excel only give you 1 worksheet to work with. And basically, a spreadsheet file is called a workbook, and an individual sheet is called a worksheet. And this is the 2013 version of Microsoft Excel. And it only gave us 1 worksheet to work with, where it says sheet 1 right there. But if you work for an organization that accounts for different kinds of things and you need to account for them on individual worksheets, you can always add worksheets by clicking on this plus symbol right here. And so, for example, if I click the plus symbol, it gives me a sheet 2 with everything empty there. And then if I click on it again, it gives me sheet 3. And if you discover that you've put in too many worksheets in your spreadsheet, you can always right click on the individual tab and say delete, and it shrinks down like so. And so that's one of the things in my Microsoft Excel 2 class is I do talk about adding numbers across multiple worksheets. But once again, when you do go to save, we'll do a saving example here. File, save as. We'll save it to the computer desktop. Microsoft will save it as a workbook, and I'll say sample 1. And if I click save, the title of the workbook is right here, sample 1. And then if I reduce the here, and then on your desktop, I don't know if you can see my desktop or not, it's say this desktop one right there as well. And so it actually paused my screen right there. So so I didn't show that, but that's how you save. So with
Got a question for you.
sure.
I know we're at the end of the class, but when you set up sheet number 2, can you copy all the functions from sheet 1 to apply to sheet 2?
I think you can. So for example, if you're doing like a you're doing souvenir sales revenue for Disney World here on sheet 2, you're doing it for Disneyland, for example, or whatever. I believe what you can do is, you can click on your source, say copy, and it might come up as gibberish here, but and then here you do a paste and 0.00. So yeah, it looks like, in theory, it looks like it can be done.
Gotcha.
One of the things I do talk about in the second Excel class is the retrieving of numbers from one location to another location. So I think in advance you can set up the formulas, provided that your cell location is correct. And then one of the things you can do is you can ask Microsoft Excel to read data from one worksheet to another worksheet to help you with your data. And I have a simple example where we add up like total sales revenue from 4 different regions or something like that. And so it's rather simple, but it at least gives you the theoretical underpinnings or whatnot. So anyway, are there any other questions?
So I did have kind of like a comment to what you asked. In my job, we have to copy the worksheets. So what we do is go under format, and I didn't want to say anything because maybe you're going to teach this in one of your other classes, but I think it's under format, and there's a tab called copy sheet, and then it lets you, so it's under home.
It's under home?
Yes, and then you go to format. I think it's format all the way under where it says cells.
Okay. Oh, okay.
It's either there or sort and filter.
Okay.
Oh, it is there. So format, and then you do move or copy sheet.
Okay. Okay, here it is.
This is how I was shown at work. And then it's going to copy everything to either the sheet 4, or you can make a whole new Excel spreadsheet. So
okay.
I do create copy, and then it's going to ask you before sheet 1 or before sheet 4. Do you want to move it to the end? Depending on what you're trying to do, I usually click move to end or copy to sheet 4.
Okay. I've only used this once or twice, so I'll ask you, do you find that this saves you a lot of work and pain?
It does when it keeps the formulas.
Okay.
Yeah.
But when it doesn't, you have to reconfigure the formulas, I imagine. So, okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
In our job, usually the Excel spreadsheet, you know how I think you came up with showing us how to lock us, or you said in one of the other classes, you're going to show us how to like lock the spreadsheet.
Or like a cell.
Yeah, like protect sheet. So some of the cells are protected, and the formulas, after you do copy it, they will not be removed. So you can go ahead and remove the data, but it doesn't remove the formula. And then let's say they were doing this yearly, for example, like in sheet 4, the next following year would be there with the exact same formulas. But that's just kind of how I don't know if that's what Wallace was trying to ask, but that's a way to copy everything.
Okay. Yeah. I've had my different experiences on how to do that. And of course, my line of work is I don't have to do anything in terms of library administration, in terms of where we have to use a spreadsheet for materials, spreadsheet for programming, spreadsheet for outreach or something like that. I do know that my branch manager probably has to encounter things like that, so she can account for her the library branch budget or something like that. And so I imagine she employs things like that. Basically, this class is designed to deliver you the underpinnings of the mechanism that takes place right there. In terms of all the programs in the Microsoft Office suite, Excel is probably my favorite program because I could probably teach up to maybe 10 or 11 classes from Microsoft Excel and probably still not cover everything that you hope for me to cover. I mean, it's like, I could talk about, driving the car and having the automatic window, having the automatic mirror, but, it still might not satisfy you because you're looking for a Bluetooth player and basically maybe a car that wants to self-drive or something like that. But what I'm hoping here is that the concept is delivered and you're understanding what I'm trying to convey. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and stop my share here. And then I'm going to go ahead and do another share real quick. And I'm going to show you a website that I hope will help you along the path to learning. And this is the GCF site, the GCF Learn Free site. And this is, can everybody see this site here? It's basically the web address that I typed in to get here is gcflearnfree.org. And as a matter of fact, it's sponsored by the Goodwill Community Foundation. So they have a couple of different organizations that participate in this website. But I typed in gcflearnfree.org. And when I scroll down to the bottom here, it has lesson plans in terms of technology, work, also to help you with the core skills, like with job hunting. But also, you can also click on all topics, and that will open up a table of contents page for all things technology, including Microsoft Excel. And so some of the things that I might not have covered in today's class, you might find in these lesson plans. It has lesson plans from, I think, Excel 2000 all the way up to Excel 2016. And so, and basically, the beauty of this website is each of the lesson plans have their own videos to show you how it's done. The videos run about 4 to 6 minutes. And the beauty of that, of course, is you can play it over and over again until you feel that the concept is sunk in. So I wholly endorse this website. And once again, the web address is gcflearnfree.org.